College Club is trying to do that, and so far it hasn't worked out very well.
I think it's working pretty well for them. I mean, part of the thing there is having a good internet connection in the meeting room, and having, I guess, a good moderator who's pretty handy at kind of using technology to bounce back and forth, between the two mediums.
So you have a camera set up in the meeting room, and you also have a screen with everyone online?
Right. So they've got a big projected screen. So, when they're like, if we were going to do, when Jeff is showing demonstrations and whatnot through his screen sharing, that's then projecting up on a larger screen. And so the camera is nothing more than just a regular webcam. It's not like you're looking at the whole room. You're actually looking more usually at the speaker itself, depending on how you set it up.
I just lost my YouTube feed, so hang on a minute.
Roger's got his hand. Roger, do you want to come in as a...
Yeah, I think he probably does.
I'll promote him.
I hit a button, and for some reason, it just wiped out my YouTube link. It looks like YouTube's still going, but I sort of like the monitor.
Hello.
Oh, all the fun buttons here to push. Come on.
I finally decided to use my iPad Pro, which I've been just using my regular iPad for the meeting. So apparently it's not just push a button and everything works fine.
What are you saying, Ellen?
Technology is great when somebody else can just sort of sit there with you and tell you what to do.
It's kind of pain in the butt when you're used to it and they do an update and then they rechange everything. It's like, oh man.
Oh, should we mention names like Adobe? It's like, wait, that used to be over here.
Windows,
Well,
Mac,
okay.
iPhones.
I can't find my Internet Explorer. Where does that go?
Long gone.
And many sites, now. Oh, sorry. Many sites are not using Explorer anymore. If you try to use Explorer, they say, use Edge, and which is working better for me.
You can't use Explorer anymore. They shut it off.
Yeah.
Explorer is shut down. Well, welcome everybody to Digital Forum. I'm a couple minutes late on getting started, but some reason I've had problems with watching my YouTube feed. So welcome. The first hour, we're just going to do general Q&A. And the second hour, I'm going to talk about the new features of Lightroom, because couldn't come up with anything else. Going to working on trying to get speakers, but they're really hard to get in summertime. Everybody is busy on Saturdays, so so we're working on it.
I have a question right away about Lightroom.
Sure.
I heard that you can get the Adobe and the Lightroom package for $15 a month, and that seems really low, and I don't know if that's true, and I forgot to look it up.
It's only
for $10 a month. I think they still have that price. I don't think it includes as much cloud space.
Well, I'm not interested in cloud space, but if it's really $10 or $15 a month, then I would go for it, but not any higher.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it should be only $10 a month for those two. What you sometimes hear is Ellen and I talk about having the full package of Adobe products, which is now $55 or $60 a month. But InDesign, Premiere, just every product pretty much that Adobe makes, they have in one big package.
Oh, does
but
Bridge, oh, sorry. Does
Yeah.
Bridge come with the Adobe and Lightroom?
Yeah.
Here's the deal. I think it's $599 if you pay for the full year for every Adobe product, Muse, Lightroom, Photoshop, and so on. And it's plus tax, so it's 600 and a quarter, maybe something in that area for a full year's worth, and everything that Adobe offers, I have access to. Do I use it? Nope. I use Photoshop, I use Illustrator, I use InDesign. Tried working with Infinity, but those are baby steps that I'm working on. Just because it's new and it takes a little bit of time, but I pay for the full year. So I get a slight discount with whatever the monthly fee is. So I suppose I should take a look at Lightroom and see, because I just recently wrote an article on turning things to grayscale in Photoshop and 3 different ways to do it. Basically focusing on the adjustment layer. And what I don't know is that offered in Lightroom as well? So I'm going to look into that. I'm probably going to put the article that I did into this July newsletter and just see what's going to happen with it. And then those people who have expertise in Lightroom or even in Infinity Photo can let me know if there's something similar, because I figured at this stage, I can't know every program. So the programs I know, I probably know fairly well. And then I'll just rely on others to tell me yay, nay, or maybe, that sort of thing. So yeah, Jeff, do you buy a package per year? Not to give away any financial secrets.
No,
but,
I pay the $55 a month,
okay.
which has all the apps. The photography app, and now you got to be careful. You want to buy the photography app if you buy it, and that's $10 a month. And that includes Lightroom for the desktop, Photoshop for the desktop. Then it also includes Lightroom and iPad programs, Lightroom and Photoshop for the iPad as well. Now, where I get a lot of people that get screwed up is they buy the Lightroom one, which is strictly the cloud Lightroom version that only works on the iPad. Well, it works on the desktop, but on the iPad, but all the stuff is stored in the cloud. You want to stay away from that one, because that one is just, once you get stuck into it, it's a mess to get out. So you want to make sure you use the photography plan if you want to get into it. And so, yeah, you're talking $120 a month, which I know Marty has problems with. I have some problems with and paying $55 a month, but I've also been getting frustrated because half the programs I use now every year or every 6 months, they seem to bring out a new version. I just am frustrated with Nick because I just upgraded to 4 last fall. Now they brought out 5, which cost me another $80 to upgrade. And but yet the new version in Nick 5 has so many good features in it that I wanted to upgrade. So I whether you pay a subscription or keep upgrading, that's the whole trick. But I got to admit, I dropped Lumiere. I've dropped On1 Photo Raw. I also had Boris effects, and all those were, well, they weren't, 2 of them weren't subscriptions, but I've got their old versions that I keep, but I don't use. Because, yeah, it's getting too hard to keep track. I'm staying with Photoshop and Lightroom. for myself. But I don't know how everybody else is doing it, but
I've got a $10 a month package, and what I have is Camera Raw, Lightroom Classic. That's the one on the stored on the computer, and Photoshop. And there's also loaded on my computer the other Lightroom, which I haven't touched. I don't want to deal with the online stuff. But that's just $10 a month.
Yeah, My Creative Live says it also includes Bridge. I have installed Bridge and Adobe DC. I'm not even sure what that is, but it installed it for me. But under the ones that's available that I don't have installed is Premiere Rush, Photo Express, and UXP developer tools. And all that for $10.
yeah.
Yeah.
Plus you get Lightroom Mobile, which allows you to share your Lightroom on your computer with your phone, so you can share your photos on your phone. It also includes your portfolio, so you've got a website that you can display your photos on and share that link with friends. So that's all included in your $10 subscription.
Yeah. And you get 20 gigabytes of cloud storage with that, which you can buy more storage if you need. But even for me, I've got a ton of stuff in the clouds, and I think I'm only using 10 gigabytes. So, because it's just the thumbnail size stuff. So,
Thank you. This has all been very helpful. So I think I'm going to ditch some of the other programs, like On One that's gone to subscription. You know,
On One has not gone to On One has not gone to subscription. They offer a subscription option, but they are still a standalone buy it year-to-year program.
Oh, really? Because all I see is subscription, and
No,
when I
well,
upgrade it,
yeah,
subscription, and so I'm.
It comes down to a subscription unless you don't upgrade it.
Yeah. And
because if you're buying it every month, you're paying a subscription.
They do offer a subscription that has more functionality than just the standalone. Again, some of the things that Ken was mentioning that Lightroom does with some online storage, being able to have your pictures on all your devices and that kind of thing. But it is not a subscription like Adobe. It's a subscription where the only way you can pretty much do it anymore is having it in the cloud or online with them.
Yeah, I misread, or they fooled me. It said upgrade to the newest version, and it became subscription, which ran out because I'm not paying for it.
Yeah, no, you must have misread it then, Tony, because that's not a subscription only program.
Yeah, well, I'm going to ditch it anyway.
No, that's fine. I mean,
I really. Because I'm using Lightroom and Photoshop. The last DVD that it came out, that's what I'm using. And I just have trouble switching to others. Yeah. So anyway.
But I suggest that whatever a person has, they stay with that and they learn it the best. I just ran into the problem. I think it's sort of like Ellen and the rest. I was using all these different programs and I just couldn't keep up anymore. And I wasn't doing any of the programs well. So I went back to just doing Lightroom and Photoshop, especially since Lightroom has added so much more features. That's the nice part with Luminaire and On One pushing Adobe to keep updating their programs. So it's good that we have all this competition and everybody has their favorite programs to use, and they all in some way get to be a subscription, because if you want the latest new features, you're buying the latest new version, which means you're subscribing to it. It's just, you're either paying a full year each year, and that's what I was doing with Luminaire. I think I've got Luminaire 2018, 19. Then they went to Luminaire, and then they went to Luminaire 3, 4, and then Luminaire AI, then Luminaire Neo. And I have all of them except Neil. And every year I was upgrading. So to me, that's a subscription. I didn't have to upgrade. But
no, Jeff, and I agree with that. In fact, I will say that I have not gone to Luminar Neo, partly for that reason. You know, that is one thing that sets On One apart. Anybody want a big horsefly? That, you know, yes, they do their upgrades, but they're upgrading a current program. They're not creating a whole new program, which is what Luminar has been doing, and I've kind of become discontented with that. But you're absolutely right, Jeff. Every year, Luminar kind of reinvents the wheel for themselves, and
Yep.
If you want their latest with On One, you are upgrading from their previous version, so you're not having to have 6 different versions of On One. You're having one version of it at the latest version.
I've got On One 2021, 2020, 2019, and 2018. So I've got 4 versions that I paid for on One as well. So, and I've stopped that. I stopped at 2021. I never bought 2022. So in some ways they still have the subscription. Maybe it's my problem because I like having the latest version that has the best features in it to make life easier. But
this was, I guess, this was my core argument when Adobe did this originally, and this is one of the reasons that I went away from Adobe. But look at the Pandora's box that Adobe opened with not just photography programs, but every program now. You're paying $5 for this program, or $10 for that one, or $30 for. I mean, a year on all these different programs. It's just, to me, it's just not a sustainable model for most of us who have to keep shelling out the money for all these subscriptions.
Right.
The latest and greatest. They did a very big disservice, in my opinion, to the software industry when they did that.
Well, I understand part of the reason why they did it is that now Adobe's big enough, but smaller companies needed to go to subscription just to help keep paying to support that stuff. I mean, it costs money to keep these programs running and to debug them and do all that fun stuff.
I get that, you know, and then it goes beyond just what we do on our computers. But, you know, every mobile app now is going to the same thing. So it's $1 here or $3 there. Next thing you know, you're spending $837 a month on subscription, and most of us just can't do that.
Yep, and I'll agree. I dropped a ton of stuff that I was paying per month. I stopped Dropbox. I was paying $200 a year in Dropbox fees. I dropped that one, and I've slowly been dropping all these different ones that are costing money because, yeah, it's getting too expensive to do.
No,
you better get that fly.
A lot of
Go ahead, Jim.
A lot of those products that you can do the same thing in Photoshop with a lot of, like all the Nick filters and stuff. I used to buy those and I stopped buying them because I prefer to do it myself. One of the advantages is you can do things a little bit faster, maybe with some of those software products. But if you learn how, you can actually do it, even though it might take a little bit longer in Photoshop. But there's also the case, I just got back from the Photo Pills camp, and they are going to subscription too. And in having a discussion with the developers there, I kind of see why they're doing it. I don't know if anyone here uses Photo Pills, but they were like, I paid $10 for them like 5 years ago, and I've been using it ever since. And the reason that they're going to a subscription is because they want to offer things that cost money. They have a red pin placed on the map where you're located or where you want to be located. And every time someone moves the red pin in their app, Google charges them a small fraction of a cent or whatever for that. And it adds up, and they've been paying that, and they can't sustain that. And all the data that they want to add, for example, tides all over the world, but to get all that data from the different organizations, they have to pay for it. And sure. so they're going to go to a subscription to help them pay for some things like that.
I just looked up my price. I pay, including tax, $632.87, and that includes all apps and 100 gigabytes of, Creative Cloud usage. Now, they've done some things with Adobe as far as type 1 fonts. They're by the end of this year, they're gone, and they are losing Pantone colors because that's going to be an additional add-on service via Pantone. So I don't know what's going to happen with that either.
Ellen, you said you're paying that much, but that's not just Adobe, right? What kind of apps are you talking about? And are you using them for commercial purposes?
I have been using these Adobe products since probably the late 80s. And so because I do other various newsletters and I teach design via some other places, I had to pick one, so to speak. I had to pick a page layout. I had to pick an image editing program, and the Adobe products just seem to work a whole lot better. I don't use a lot of the apps, but I have access and can use Muse and all of the other things that they have to offer. I liken it to, I don't have a business, but maybe I should do that, although nobody pays me. So it's kind of hard to keep saying, oh no, the guy in Michigan, I used to get pie at Christmas from the guy in Michigan. So whatever that would amount to, that's how he paid me. But how can I say I'm somewhat addicted to it? I think because now it's just like, oh, I'm too old to start over. Oh God, I don't want to do it. And I know I have to do it for the newsletter because I'm not as young as I used to be, and I'm not going to be able to do this forever, but I can't have somebody working in the Adobe InDesign program when I have been sort of working with Affinity. It's not photo, it's
Publisher, isn't it?
Publisher, I think.
Publisher, yeah.
Correct. And I have been able to open IDML files in Affinity with a lot of luck, but well, not a lot of luck. I'm sure they built it that way, but I haven't really gone beyond opening and seeing, how much time it would take me to kind of redo that. But I promised myself that I would start doing that just for the other people that I write information about and so on.
Well, one thing I would recommend is that you either monetize it to pay for the cost, but also you might want to approach some of these companies and tell them that you're teaching using that product and see if you can get it for free or a discount.
Because I mentioned the products a lot and so on. You're right. That's probably not a bad idea.
But Adobe unfortunately doesn't help you.
How many people? Oh, I don't know. I reach upwards of maybe 127, so that's probably not going to be enough for anything.
No, I know it's the only reason that I like Adobe, but I like the subscription because it saved me a ton of money in the long run. I was buying the whole package of suites when I first started with Adobe, and that was about $1,200 a year.
Yeah.
And when we went to subscription, it cut that in half, and that saved me a ton of money. So I've always been happy with it. Now that I'm not needing all these extra programs, I'm having the problem of, well, I still use InDesign because I like that, but I don't use some of these others anymore. And to pay $55 a month does drive me a little crazy. And I'm looking at going back to $10 and seeing if Affinity could do it because I have that program. But like Ellen, I looked at Affinity, I started playing with it, and it's as complicated and different over InDesign. And when you get used to one program,
Yeah.
you just sort of like it. And Pages in the Mac world is getting so close to being good enough for what I do for designing newsletters that I probably could get away with Pages. But even that, though, I just don't have the time to delve into it. I'm used to InDesign, but yeah, we all have our problems.
Well, I don't pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars for camera lenses, so I justify it a little bit that way.
So while we're on this subject, because I do have a poll I want to put out just to help me work on future digital forums. It's only 5 questions. It's on image processing. Since that's what I use the most, I'm going to launch it here. So everybody, I know Marty and I can't do it.
I was going to say, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And then Jeff,
I don't know.
done with this. No, I can't. Jim Hayes has had his hand up for quite a bit here. So I know he's got a question in the chat. So maybe we want to pull that one up.
Okay. Yeah, I had seen it. Oh yeah. He is everybody seeing the poll?
Correct, but I see
Jeff,
and panelists cannot vote, so anyone
Right,
on the
panelists can't vote. But we have 26 attendees, so I'm hoping that 26 attendees will vote, please. Yeah. Yeah, the personal portfolio page, I use it a little bit. I have my own website, so I don't use it as much. I do help one of my customers in Florida uses the portfolio page quite a bit from Lightroom. I think we had talked about it at one time before. It's a good product. It works if you don't, this way you don't have to buy a website and you can show your images pretty well. So yeah, we could get into that at some time here.
I did see that they increased it because it used to be only, I believe, only 10 gig, and now you mentioned about 20 gig.
Yeah, you get 20 gigabytes of cloud storage with the $10 a month photo charge. And you can buy more space if you would need to. I'm just trying to remember how to get to my portfolio site.
Well, if you need it, I got a copy on my computer.
Oh, here, I know, I can get through it this way. Where'd it go?
Something Jeff said earlier, though, and I think is very true, is whatever program you're using, he's right. Find one or maybe 2 and just stick with it, learn them well. The bouncing back and forth just doesn't help anybody when you're trying to do that. They're all good programs. They all are very capable programs. I just think that it's correct to say find 1 or 2 that are going to work for you and stick with it and learn it. I just think that's good sound advice for everybody.
Yeah. We all have our favorites, and we all have our own reasons for using the different programs.
I have finger memory. I mean,
yeah.
Sometimes I don't know what I'm doing, but my fingers know where to go. I start. So it's like, it's different.
I'll show that. Yeah, I'll show that portfolio site. Let me see if I can do it this way. I'm going to end that poll. Looks like everybody pretty much. Thanks for answering that for me. So here's the portfolio site that I have. Or here's how you get into it. If I click on it, it'll just show, here's the setup that you get. And it basically works off of collections in Lightroom. These are the collections that I have turned on right now. And I can add more. And I gotta admit, I always have fun. I do this, I believe I can.
You go back a page, Jeff.
Yeah.
That big blue plus sign.
Yeah, that's the add to page. Yeah, you're right.
And I don't even use this stuff.
Yeah. See, you could tell I haven't worked on it for a while.
Right.
Come on. But you can probably, Ken, I think you've had a hard time to create a page like albums from Lightroom. I think that's the one.
Yeah, I haven't upgraded mine in a couple of years now, so it's a little rusty to go back, but
yeah.
But it does make a good site that you can direct people to see your photography.
Yeah, and if you could see, it just popped up all my albums that I have, or all my collections that I'm syncing. I'm just trying to find the last one that I did, but I have too many collections, man. Come on. Where's the burner? Because I was going to add that to this one anyhow, if I could figure out. Oh, there it is. It's, of course, it's in alphabetical order. Wouldn't that be, you know? So now it should have added that in. And there it is. So I just had 13 images in there. You can reorder the content, edit the grid style. But here I just added one collection real quick. Now, if I go back, it should be in here as well, so you can turn it on and off, and you've got some of the stuff here that you can adjust. You got different themes and settings. So it's basically a web page. And if I hit preview, we can see what it all looks like. So there's the botanical garden one. I've got like my work contact, which I should actually change. And here's all the different pages that I currently have. And the nice part is that you've got a spot here to show for desktop. Looks like iPhones and iPads. So I can change it so I can see how it's going to look on an iPad and on a vertical iPad, horizontal iPad, iPhone. So it's a handy thing, and it comes free with your Lightroom. And then I can view my site once it's updated. So it's a quickie, easy website. I got to change a few things because I think my contact information's out of date because I dropped my business phone. I don't even have, maybe that's under the work. Oh no, it's, so they can contact me through a email link through a form that you can see here. So, and it is public, although I don't advertise it because I have my regular website.
Plus, there's different templates that you can use for it. I use a slightly different template than what Jeff has.
So hope that answers your portfolio question. I don't think you have to store the images on Adobe's cloud, but it's easier doing it with collections. I think you can also bring them in on their own, but I'd have to double check that. Ken, you think it's
somehow
just
they're
collection?
somehow they're linked to the Adobe website.
Yeah.
And I don't
It
know
uses-
how they do that, but
Yeah.
they're you can go to the besides their portfolio website for controlling it a little bit. You can go yourself to the Adobe website and see the images that you have linked there, including your collections and all your photos that you've got linked to Adobe.
Yeah.
And so if they have them there, they're probably just a thumbnail. And I've never had a problem with space. I mean, it's just it uses up very little space.
Yeah, I've got tons of collections and they're all synced up there. And I think I'm only using maybe 10 gigabytes of space. So just the results of the poll, in case anybody is interested, and it's sort of interesting to me, is Adobe Lightroom, most people have. Luminar comes in second, and on one, actually, DxO Photolab comes in third, and on one comes in fourth. And then there's a couple people that use other stuff.
What are some of the other ones?
Yeah, if people want to put some of the other ones that you use either in the chat or in the Q&A, let us know what you're using. I'm always interested in hearing what other people use.
I use Tony Kuiper for the luminosity masks. And I was thinking that I think the other software that people are using a lot for that is, does it Luminar do luminosity masks?
You can do luminosity mask to both Luminar and on one.
Yeah.
Oh, you can
Almost.
on one? I haven't used that in a number of years.
Yeah.
But that's one thing that Photoshop, it's hard to do in Photoshop. So I use Tony Kuiper, but he has added a whole bunch of buttons to do other stuff, that other buttons for things that he puts all in one place for Photoshop. And Sean Bagshaw teaches the videos for his product. And I had a conversation with him when I was in Europe about the all the other buttons. And I told him that the reason that I don't use all the other buttons in the Tony Kuiper panels is, and this might be true of Luminar too, is because if I'm teaching Photoshop to somebody, I don't want to forget how to do it in Photoshop. And if I get used to the buttons, I tend to forget how to do the basics in Photoshop.
I looked at his panel and I just don't use luminosity masks. I do it other ways, I guess. That was sort of a big phase that happened, and now it's dying out. I do use Photoshop and Lightroom's masking tools quite a bit.
Adobe is kind of adding some of that functionality to Lightroom, but there's not a good way to select things in a photo, do selections with the luminosity values. You can do it manually using channels, but to get to all the different levels, I used to have a free product that created all the luminosity masks, and then you could select one of them, but you had to delete them afterwards, or it made huge files.
Yeah, I've got a couple ways, and I do use one guy's luminosity panels, but I hardly ever use it. So
Greg Benz is the name of the one you're probably using, Jeff.
Which one?
BENZ, Greg Benz.
Yeah, that's the one I have for free. I used it for a long time. That's the one that creates them all, right, Ken?
I believe so, yeah. Plus, I mean, I think it's a little lighter than the Tony, how'd you pronounce it? Cupper.
Kuiper.
Yeah, I
Tony
think it's-
Kuiper, though, allows you to select masks based on colors, based on all the different luminosity masks, and you can select the one. The Benz, Greg Ben, yeah, I have that. Greg Benz it creates not hundreds, but probably 20 or 30 masks when you click the button in the channels panel. And if you don't delete those when you're done using them, then you don't want to save those in the file. It makes 2 and 3 gigabyte size files. But it is free. You're right. It is free. And I used it for a long time before I started using the Tony Kuiper.
I use Raya Pro is the luminosity panel I use.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
I can't remember which guy created that one. I follow a couple guys with luminosity stuff, but the Raya Pro had worked nice enough for what I needed. It's not installed in my current version of Photoshop because when Photoshop upgraded last time, I lost everything again. But it's works pretty.
Yeah, but it looks like Jim Croft, he's got his hand up there. I don't know if he's got a comment or if he wants to join us here.
Jim, did you want to just join us? Is that it? Just type yes in the chat or something, and we can bring you in. Okay.
Kind of a yes.
Gary mentioned Topaz.
Yeah, his spelling's off a little bit, but it works.
Yeah, I think the Topaz has been traditionally used for manipulating and putting different effects in the files, but recently they've come out with the denoise and the sharpen and the gigapixel that are pretty good products for doing what they do.
Yeah, I do have all the Topaz modules as well. Topaz Studio, they're phasing out, which I'm sort of frustrated with because I like their studio.
I was just going to mention the luminosity mask is now in Lightroom for those people who use the masking there. I've been enjoying just sitting back watching you guys talk about different programs, so it's been really enjoyable. I just want to mention, I mean, I was one of those that was kicking and screaming against the subscription models, but I will say that the technology is changing really quickly. So if you haven't seen latest versions of many of these programs, they're doing things they simply couldn't do a year and a half or 2 years ago. So some of them are, like, again, Lightroom, the masking is absolutely phenomenal now in the very latest versions. It's fabulous. And the same thing with Neo, and the same thing with On1, the 3 that I use most often. But again, luminosity is now in Lightroom, and it's also easy to adjust and work with.
Yeah, that's true. I forgot that they added that in with some of the latest updates. Yeah, so thanks, Jim. Yeah, we've got Gary Jones. He uses Lightroom, but Topaz, denoise, sharpen, and gigapixel. Topaz does have a lot of good programs out there. Their denoise program is pretty good. I use gigapixel once in a while.
Another one he mentioned was Helicon Focus, which I used several years ago. And I've been thinking about buying that one again. I don't know if anyone's familiar with it, but when I was using it probably 5 years ago, or maybe a little more, you had to hook it up. You had hook your camera up to a laptop and have it there when you were using it. And I think they changed to where you don't have to hook it up to your laptop anymore, or to a
No, yeah, I believe all you have to do is shoot your 10, 20, 50, 100 shots, and then Helicon will stack them all.
Helicon Focus on the camera you could set up and it would take your pictures for you. It would control where the pictures are, and you could specify the closest point of focus and the farthest point of focus, and it would figure out how many photos you need for them between and shoot all those for you. But
I never used it that way. I just used it after I shot the photos to stack them.
The process.
But
yeah.
now I just use Photoshop.
But I heard when I was in Spain that somebody asked about the R7, but the Canon R5, I was told, and I'm kind of interested in investigating this, will actually do that in camera now, where you can specify the closest and furthest point of focus, and it will take all the pictures in between for you. If that can do that, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
actually what it does is you specify an increment and how many pictures you want to take, and then you set it on servo autofocus, and it'll find the closest focal point and then start taking pictures beyond that, however many that you specified. And I've got the R6 and it does it quite nicely.
So it does it, I'm not quite clear. Does it do it for the depth of field that you specify, or is it doing it from with the point you specify to infinity?
The point of nearest focus to infinity.
Okay, that's a little different, I think.
Yeah, and then when you're in Helicon focus, if you don't need all of those pictures, you can selectively choose which ones you want to do to make your image.
Well, how does Helicon focus control that on your camera? Do you have an attachment for your hot shoe or something?
No, you take the pictures into Lightroom, and then you do an export to Helicon focus, and take the combine all of the pictures, and then it'll take you back to Lightroom. And
but that's for post-processing. I'm talking about actually taking the pictures. When you take the pictures with Helicon focus.
I guess I don't know anything about that.
You just set it up in your camera and that's it. You let the camera do the work instead of all the other stuff behind the scene.
Right.
But Helicon focus actually controls where the shots are taken.
I've never had it. I've never been able to. It doesn't work with my cameras to do that. Maybe it works with Canons. I don't know.
Yeah, I was in a workshop where we had it set up with a laptop, and you had to.
Oh, well, there was one. There was a way that Helicon did control it, but you had to buy this focusing
rail.
Some kind of focusing rail that it actually moved the rail, and the camera stayed. The focus was locked, and the rail just moved.
Yeah,
I know that was available.
The one that I used, it was on the laptop, and you went into their software on the laptop, and you had it wired to your camera, and you'd look at the picture that it got from the camera, and you'd say, I want this point to be my closest focus, and I want this point to be my furthest focus, and it would determine it needs 20 shots to get the entire depth of field, and then it would take those 20 shots, and so then you had all those and you could import them for post-processing. But yeah, I was told that you no longer needed to hook up your computer to do that, and I'm kind of wondering what they've gone to.
Yeah, I have no idea. I stopped following Helicon when they went to subscription, and my first year I bought it, never used it, and I go, well, I'm not spending that money again, and I haven't looked back at them. So I'm not sure. I never heard of it doing that, but it could very well have
it was pretty
an
cool
element of it.
And I was wondering if they're doing that now without a laptop. Do they have a device that you put in your hot shoe? I guess that's something I need to investigate.
Yeah, you'd have to check. I don't think it would work through the hot shoe, but there's plenty of other ways that it could connect to the camera. Maybe somebody out there knows, and if you do, let us know.
Yeah, I really don't want to be carrying a laptop, in the middle of field, walking 20 miles. Is like, just bring the camera and let the camera do it. I don't care if I got 10,000 pictures in that, it's like memory's cheap in that, with the SD cards and that. So let the camera do the work and worry about it when you get home.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why it wasn't very good for anything other than studio photography, but it did work well for that.
My Nikon mirrorless does the same thing as Roger's Canon does. You tell it how many shots you want to take, and it goes from whatever your close focus is to infinity, and you just tell it how many shots you want, and it will do that, and does it fairly quick. So I haven't played with it that much, but
so basically it sounds just like HDR, but instead of, you know, the light, it just changes the focus.
Yep. And nowadays, I think Photoshop does a pretty decent job of finding and merging all those images together. So that's what I've used when I do try it. But yeah. No, interesting. I don't know. Has anybody played with the R7 or have thoughts of it? I am not a Canon person, so I got to admit, I haven't kept up with Canon and all their new.
I think the R7 is a crop sensor camera, if I'm right, which a lot of the wildlife photographers like.
Yeah.
And also it's made for sports. It's faster for sports type photography, I believe.
Yeah, it's kind of the predecessor to the 7D Mark II, which is a crop sensor, and so that's one of the theories is that if you're really liking that camera, you're gonna love the R7, just for those very reasons, Rama.
Yeah. No, I gotta admit, every now and then I think about Canon cameras only because there's a certain camera I want to buy that uses Canon lenses, and that drives me nuts. But oh well, I'm staying with my Nikons.
Yeah, I kind of I'm looking at switching to mirrorless, and that gives me the opportunity to choose brands if I want. And I was actually kind of thinking about Nikon, but I found out that the latest in the Canon line has higher dynamic range than the Nikon even, which is one of the reasons I like the idea of the Nikon.
You mean Canon's finally catching up to dynamic range to Nikon?
Yeah.
It's taken them a while.
If I have a question, if you move to a mirrorless camera, can you still use, I have Canon, can you still use the lenses on it, or does that require different
You need an adapter.
Yeah, I was thinking that I wanted to buy all the lenses because the part of the weight savings is in the lenses, or a big part of the weight savings.
Yeah.
Number two, I thought there were more features in the new lenses for like focus peaking and things like that. But I went to a demo last week by a Canon representative who said that there's absolutely no difference in the features on an existing lens with an adapter and the new RF lenses. And so that's making me think that maybe I'll keep my lenses for a while and just get an adapter.
So basically they are selling. So if you do buy a mirrorless, there are specific lenses that are geared to coordinate with the mirrorless, but with an adapter, you can use your old lenses.
Yeah, the new lenses coming out are also much sharper. They're better lenses. They're coming out with a new level of sharpness, but the old lenses will work.
Okay. And I'm sure they cost more than my subscription to all the Adobe products.
Just figure $2,000 a lens.
Yeah.
That's how I started.
Yep. But they're smaller and lighter. That goes with the mirrorless body, and sharper. So, but at least you can do it slowly, and you don't have to do it all in one shot.
Well, that's true.
What
There
I
are
do
certain
notice,
things I can get past my husband, but sometimes there are things I have to put on an installment plan. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
what I do notice is on the lenses for the mirrorless lenses, it seems like the diameter is bigger than the older DSL lenses. So they're wider in diameter.
Which lets in more light, and that's why they can make them with less glass and they're not as heavy.
They are a little lighter, but I don't think, we're talking less than package of beef turkey, you know, I mean, they're really light. We're talking ounces and that, so that they're pretty light.
But they are a lot sharper with the bigger lens opening. They're able to get you faster lenses for less money than what the other ones used to be. So there's definite benefits of mirrorless, and we're going to keep seeing all the standard DSLR stuff disappear.
And I do believe that that's the main key factor for the mirrorless. It seems like the mirrorless, the mirrorless, the lenses are definitely sharper. That's it's crisp, extremely crisp.
Yep.
Clinton, do you use Nikon or Canon or?
I changed. I went back to Sony. I mean, it took me 20 years to go back to Sony. Used to be Canon and that, but what I'm using is technically I'm using a Canon lens on my Sony body, but some of the features, because I have an adapter, some of the features on the lens will not work.
So when you said that the mirrorless lenses don't make that much savings there's not that much savings in the weight for the mirrorless lenses. You have used the mirrorless, some of the mirrorless.
I have the mirrorless in that. I have the mirrorless. The body itself is lighter, but I actually still like the Canon body shape. It fits your hand better. Even though it's bigger, but the Canon, my Canon, I'm sorry, my Sony mirrorless camera is almost like the size of a point and shoot camera. I actually wish it was actually bigger because my hands are a little bit bigger and it doesn't fit as good.
Is that a full frame, Sony?
Yes, correct. I have the let's see, the 7RS, the 42 megapixel camera. I was hoping it's 2 months later the 60 megapixel came out, and that I'd like to get the 60 megapixel camera, and then I would also like to get the I think it's the A1. I believe in definitely having two bodies, because one thing is kind of nice is instead of always having to change lenses, you just keep the one lens on, because I do the photography for the air shows. So instead of always having to change from my 200 to 600 lens and go back down to my 17 to 40 lens, I just hate going, taking on off. I like to just have two bodies.
Okay.
I agree with that. I've had two bodies for quite a number of years for when I'm traveling, and I found out that in the future I hope to have two bodies of the same model. I had the Canon 6D, the original, and the Canon 5D Mark IV. And I found out that the 6D was so old. When I was in Patagonia, I set up a second tripod and camera. I couldn't remember how to use it. I was shooting with the live view most of the time, like you would do with the mirrorless.
Well, it's hard because, you could spend $4,000 on a camera, the body is like, well, then you got to buy a second one. That's $8,000 right there. You get one lens. Well, that's $2,000. Well, now you're at $10,000. And then think about all the other equipment and, lenses and filters. You can add up real quick. And it's nice to have the second body too, just in case if one of the cameras, takes a crap on you.
Right.
Yep. No, I always carry Ken knows I carry way more equipment than a person usually needs. So I have a big car, but I believe in backups on everything, and it's worth having. Now, that's the nice part with Nikon. I've got two mirrorless cameras, and they're both styled the same, so all the functions are pretty much the same. But yeah, they're difference in price, so that worked out pretty decent. But yeah, the mirrorless stuff has worked out pretty well. I think we're going to keep seeing it take over, which, there's a lot of good advantages to it.
Yeah, I think Canon isn't even producing their DSLRs and aren't going to come out with any new DSLRs?
Yeah.
No, they're done with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're pretty well done with DSLRs. So you'll see them slowly phase them out. Nikon's starting to do the same thing, and is going to slowly shift all the mirrorless. And well, Sony is all mirrorless, and they'll be around for as long as they decide they can afford to lose money on them. So, which is what's happening with them right now. They're not making money with their Sony cameras, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with them. But
I'm curious, I did not hear that, and that would really suck, because it's like, well, I just bought something that's, you know, ancient and outdated. It's like, well, now I can't upgrade and can't continue my photography, so I got to change to a different brand.
Yeah, that's as everybody knows, I do not trust Sony for anything. I bought a bunch of printers that they discontinued servicing pretty early on after I bought them, and I go, well, great, you know, 10 grand in printers, and now I can't get the materials for them. But they're out just to make money. They don't care. And I heard a comment from one of their top executives saying, yeah, the camera market's going to change in about 5 years. And he didn't outright say, well, we're probably going to drop mirrorless cameras, but he says it's going to all go to phones, and we probably won't be in that business anymore. And it's rippling through that. What he was saying was, well, we're probably going to drop the Sony line because we're not making any money right now on those cameras. So
yeah.
We'll see. I hope it doesn't happen.
You can only do so much with the phone. I mean, I've gotten great pictures on the phone, but you can't do, you know, shoot a mile away, you know, with, you know, aircraft,
yeah.
you know.
No, but there's, yeah, it's interesting. It was an interesting comment in something that this guy from Sony was talking to somebody about, and I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but we'll see.
Well, Sony has sure done a great job of pushing the whole industry forward.
Yep. And they make great sensors, and they make good, I guess, very good commercial video cameras. So that's the area that they're talking about going into more, is just making the sensors, where they make money on that and on their commercial cameras. And their hobby cameras, that field they feel might be dying out, but there'll always be a core group of people using it. But hey, Nikon was close to bankruptcy as it was too, and I'm a Nikon guy, so I was prepared.
I was just going to mention that, Jeff. That's very true. Yeah.
Yep.
They got
not too long ago.
Have they got past that?
Yep. Yeah, they're past it. The Z9 and some of their other stuff has pulled them past, and their quarters have been very good. They're profitable again. So
that's good.
And it's hard for Nikon because they don't do a lot. They only make some glass. They make lenses and they make cameras. It's not like Canon, who makes printers and does all this other stuff.
Medical equipment. And,
yeah. So Nikon is into optics in quite a few different things, but that's really their only sideline.
Still pretty niche. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why you see Minolta gone. Pentax is sort of in there, but not by much. And you see a little bit of Fuji, but
yeah, I mean, even Olympus in its new incarnation, I wonder how long they'll hold in there, because they're so niche too. That
yep. Yeah. So who knows? But well, this was a good first hour talk. We covered a lot of different stuff.
I got to bail. See y'all.
All right, we'll see you, Marty. I know you're not interested in Lightroom.
Well, and I've got some other things I need to take care of this afternoon, so I'm going to go do that. Thanks, guys.
No problem. No problem. We'll see you
Take care,
around.
Marty.
Bye.
So, all right, so let me get started. This is not going to probably be the smoothest of presentations because this stuff just came out and I'm still in the process of working with it. But Lightroom came out with a new version. Let's see, I got to find which screen. So this is I'm working with version 11.4. Let me just see if I can hide my controls. Okay. So there's a bunch of new features that 11.4 has done. And it's mainly in the develop module. And as I get over to it here, and I'm probably overloading my computer today. Okay, so they pretty much, they did a bunch of things with presets. So let me talk about the presets first, and then we'll get into some of the other stuff that they did. But one of the nice things is that they now have an amount control for the preset. So if I pick, and although only certain presets will work with this, so you have to watch it. But here was just a changing to black and white. And you can go to a minus and a plus. Now, it doesn't do a whole lot on this particular preset, but you can see it changing. So you can change the amount of the preset. Now, let's see if I can pick something a little better. They also brought in a bunch of new presets. But what's nice is you can now add amounts to your preset. So basically, it starts with 0 being in the middle, so you can go down to 0. 100 is sort of the midpoint that it starts at, and it goes all the way up to 200. So that's one of the nice new things that they've added to if you use presets in the develop module. Now, there's going to be a couple of good reasons to be using presets a little bit more. And let me reset this image so that we're back to what it was. And it comes with the masking tools that they have. Now, of course, the select subject or select sky are the two things that they have. And if I select this sky, it's gotten to be a very good, now this is a pretty complicated selection. You can see that it just selected the sky. One of the new features that they added is that I always wanted to invert. If I selected the sky, I like to do the sky and then I like to do my foreground. Now they've added a new thing. If you hit the 3 little dots, you can now duplicate and invert the mask. So if you do that, now all of a sudden I have my foreground and my subject selected and the sky not selected. So I can now control both the foreground and the background by just hitting the 3 dots here on the main mask. That is really makes things a lot easier to work with. So with this image, I've got my foreground selected. And you got to make sure you click on it so that it's active. And then, so now I can adjust my foreground and I'm not messing up my sky. And then I can go to my sky and I can darken that if I wanted to, or maybe add a little contrast to it. And, you know, you could even warm up the sky. This one, I think I'd make more blue. The other nice part is with this adjustment, you can adjust that same amount. You can adjust the amount of it I should say, by adjusting the amount slider up on top. So you've got a lot more control over your masks. Now, the part that I like with this is you can actually create a preset of this set of masks. And to do that, you just go under presets, create a preset, make sure everything's unchecked. And now over here, I can either make a mask of both the mask one, which was inverted, and the regular mask. And it also checks the support the amount slider. And so I can make this, and I'll just call this mask sky and foreground. It's a little big, but we'll do it that way. And create. So now I've got both those masks as a preset, and it's now in my user preset right here. So if I go to this picture here, completely different picture, but if I click on this, it is now updating the mask, and it has now created the masks for the foreground, which if I click the show overlay, you can see that it picked the foreground all automatically and the background automatically, or the sky automatically, with the same settings that I had. And I can now go in and readjust those settings so that they work with that image. But I can now have that stuff done in just a couple of clicks instead of doing it in, you know, going one by one and picking it out. So I've actually created a couple presets. So if I go to, like, say, this image here, I can now, I have just a light in the sky masking one. I have that the one that I did, and you can actually see what it's doing. Now, of course, that's way too much for that image, but and then I've got some for subjects as well. So let's go, and I'm finding it really works nice with my flower stuff. If I want to mask, I've got mask the subject and darken the background. I like this one, works really nice for my flower stuff, because I found it does a pretty decent job. Not the greatest all the time, but I can now go into this mask and I know I can get, there it is. So if I want to subtract, say, I can use the brush, and oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Okay, so I forget which one I was on. So I can get rid of, like, this stuff here that I really don't want. I can just paint it out, and it just keeps making it. What I really just did was I just darkened the background to 100%, or the -4 stops that it can do. You're still going to see some of it, but what I found is it works nice to bring out the flower, and then I can actually go in. Now, I messed up a little bit over here, so let's fix that. There we go. So that's not so bad. But now I can go back in and bring it so my flowers stand out and the background can be darker. And I usually like to turn down the clarity and all that to soften that background up. So it's something that I can do pretty quick with the masks now. And just to show you, I go to this one and I can do the same thing. Takes and reads it. Does a pretty nice job here, where I sort of like just having it just like this. And all I'd have to do is go in and do my cropping to make it the way I'd like. And this sort of works neat if you just want to show off a flower. But boom, I've got hardly had to do anything with it. The only other thing I've been doing is actually just hitting the auto for the adjust and let Lightroom do most of this adjustments. And then my final stuff would be, well, with flowers, I tend to run clarity to the negative side, pull my texture up. Sometimes I add a little dehaze just to get a little more contrast. And a couple seconds, I've got something done that used to take forever to do. And I'm just amazed at how nice and quick this, you know, masking does. Now this time that one didn't do quite as good. Let's see what it did for the mask. Let's see. Oops. Helps if you select the mask. Yeah, I guess my subject must be, I need to actually brighten up my subject a little bit more. There we go. But I like this where it darkens it quite a bit. So that's the major changes that they've done, is that you've got, you can now do masking as a preset, so that you just have to click it a couple times to get the stuff done. Jim Karofsky was talking about, there is, get this mask showing. If you wanted to say add or subtract to it, they do have a luminosity range down here now that you can use to pick along with color. So they do have, in a way, luminosity masking. And they also have a way that you can pick stuff with color range as well. I'm just finding that the select subject and the select sky are now working so well that it works pretty good for what I need to do, at least. And I mean, you got a lot of control. Now, I don't always do it at -4, but I like the extreme, so I know exactly where I'm at. And then I can back off so that some of my background shows up with the flower. But I'm sort of liking the flower. And then if my flower isn't bright enough, I can take this mask and, of course, duplicate and invert. And now I can adjust the flower itself. If I wanted to lighten or darken it, soften it a little bit and not soften the overall thing, or even change the color. If I didn't like the color as it originally was, I could change it to something else. A lot of fun stuff that you can do now. So that's why I'm finding that Lightroom, and you can do the same stuff in Photoshop Camera Raw if you're just using Photoshop. All the same stuff is right there. So that's also available. I'm trying to remember the other stuff that they added. I didn't pull up my notes. Let me just grab my notes quick. Anybody have any questions on that? Oh, man. Come on.
No, those flowers are sure really nice, beautiful. And then the ones that you have just like a black background, I would actually make some of them into canvas paintings. And like, boy, they're so beautiful.
Yeah.
Well,
I sort of like darkening the background with it.
I will mention also, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Jim.
I was just going to say these masks are also, you can create a mask and then, you know how they used to do Venn diagrams where they had one circle and then another one would fit over it. And then there was a point where the two overlapped. You can do that now with these masks. So you could set up a sky mask and then inside of that a color mask, and it will only work either inside or outside of where the two masks are the same. And it's these are so complicated. I don't use them very often because you really have to think through what you want to do when you do them, but they're really amazing what they can do when you have a very specific need to merge kind of two things at one time.
Yeah, I
So
think
these
that's
masks
the
are really
intersect
very
feature.
powerful now, and they're incredibly good at finding subjects.
Jim, I think that's the intersect feature.
Okay, yeah, whatever that, sorry, I didn't know what it was called, but yeah, that's what that is, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's, I don't use it. Whoops, I lost it here. I think that's, yeah, this intersect, and then you can, I actually haven't used it, so, but I think that's what you're talking about. And then you've got some of the different ways of being able to intersect them. I got to admit, I haven't gotten that deep into it. I watched a couple of videos by Matt Kloskowski on it, and I'm still trying to understand that part. But
because it's so
yeah.
fresh in my head, going to grayscale is and in Photoshop, when I did the adjustment layers, I would use the channel, the red, green, blue, you know, the channel sliders to keep the detail, but maybe manipulate my grays and so on. Is that what, working with this, working with your masking, is that how that Lightroom would take care of switching a color image to grayscale?
Yeah, you've got the black and white here that lets you, does it quickly.
Right.
And then you've got all the different colors here that you can adjust for grayscale.
Okay, so very similar to Photoshop's actions then.
Yeah, so you can really, you know, work with just very small areas, you know, just by picking the colors, and I just usually wiggle them back and forth to see. Some of them, of course, in this shot aren't going to do anything. I don't think there's any purples or magentas in here.
But I see there that it says black and white with a little triangle. Does that give you some options as presets within that area? You see the black and white?
No, they don't have presets here, but they do have presets in black and white. Right here in their style, black and white, and you can just hover over each one, and you can see.
Okay.
And this does a lot of different
channels for you. Okay, this is what I mean, I knew there probably was a way to do it in Lightroom, but I just didn't know how.
Yeah.
It's much better than taking image color grayscale.
There might be a more powerful way, and that is if you go back up to the basic settings, over on the right-hand top side, you'll see 4 little squares. And if you touch
you can
those
also
4
do it here
squares,
too.
those are profiles. And if you go to the ones that are just for black and white, as I understand it, according to Matt Kluskowski, those were written by the guy who did the Nick software black and whites. And he actually says he likes these better than the ones he wrote for Nick. So when you click on those are actually being applied at really a base level of your photo. So it's not like a preset. And the other advantage of using this as a starting point is that these do not change your sliders at all, because it's happening before the sliders would happen. So once you find this, you still can go back now and readjust all of your sliders. If you pick a preset, they will move your sliders, and now you'll have to go beyond what's been already moved in your sliders. So these profiles are very powerful. Almost no one uses them. But there are times when they're really helpful. You can find, I know I probably have about 20 different ones that over the course of time, I found other people adding different ones for black and white. And they're a really powerful way to do what I think you're trying to do.
Yeah. And then they've also added this amount slider to these, the profile, so that you can actually go 200 or 2 times stronger or minus on it. So they've also added the amount adjustment here.
Well, thank you. I just figured out, and again, it's true. It's much easier to ask a question of someone who knows what they're doing, and then I don't have to spend 3 hours trying to figure it out. So thanks.
Yeah. So, wow.
Definitely gorgeous. I mean, those pictures on the black and white, it kind of made those flower petals like kind of almost like glass. Beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. I like this bottom one, I think, the best.
Now, again, all your other sliders are still available. So, you know, again, you can still do brightness and you can do contrast and all of those things. And again, they are not moved by a profile. So they basically stay in the 0 position, making it easy to make any adjustments.
Yeah, and I've got it set right now. It was set at auto because this shot is a minus 2 stops dark, and I just grabbed that image because I didn't want to use my good image that I was doing. But yeah, you've got all the controls. I always forget about the profile part, I gotta admit. But now with this new amount adjustment, it really makes that area even a little handier for what you can do. A couple other little things that they did add. I don't know if people care too much, but on the crop overlay, you can cycle through it by hitting the 0 key, or the O key, I should say. But they've got all these standard ones that have been here, but they added this new one, which is 5ths instead of 3rds. I don't know. I still like the 3rd one. Right there, that one. So they got quite a few overlays that you can do. Then they also have you can also go through your overlays that you have using the letter I, brings up the different overlay settings that you have, like up in the upper left corner here where it says the file name. I like to have my shutter speed and f-stop and what lens, but you can actually cycle through to not have it, to have it with, this is the one I normally would have up. So I have the date and the size of the file, but then I have a second one that lets me see all that information. And then when I don't want it showing, it just disappears. Same thing on when you're in the grid, you can generally cycle through them. It's more handy to where you're in develop mode with the, you can cycle through the different settings in case you wanted to see. I like it more if I'm doing a crop so that I can actually see what I cropped it to. Because like if I, brought this in and add in, now you can see what size file it still is. So I like having that periodically. Let's see.
So Jeff, on the new masking that they've just released, what's really exciting about it is the fact that when you had the mask as a preset, the artificial intelligence will adapt it to the sky that's in your new photo.
Right.
Whereas in the past, if you tried to duplicate it, it would duplicate it to the size of the original mask. And so now with the preset, the artificial intelligence will automatically duplicate that mask, but with using the new sky and the new foreground. And that's what really makes this such an exciting feature.
Yeah. So it's nice that you can, just go and pick something. And if I go up and, say this, just pick the subject here, mask the subject, you'll see it sometimes it does it fairly quick. And right now, if I click on that mask, you can see that it just picked that subject. And I had set that mask up on I think it was a tree or something else at the time. So it really speeds up your workflow on, I mean, this is not a great shot by any means, but, and then being able to duplicate and invert and having that lets me do more with it. And of course, I'm going to crop it
Can
and do
you
all sorts
use
of other
multiple
stuff.
presets, Jeff? Can you selected the subject. Can you then go down, scroll down to the preset for black and white and change that to black and white? Does it actually?
Yeah, you could. Yeah, you could actually, if I wanted to, let's say we change this to black and white, I believe. And if I do now, if I create, say, that preset, I would just have to make sure that, the treatment and profile was done, black and white mix was done. And then if I wanted to do the masking part, I can actually pick any of these things in here to add to a preset. So if I wanted, to add some of all the basic adjustments, you could do that. Although I found that doesn't generally do work as well. But this, then you just need to label it masked -BW and hit create. And let's say we go to this one. Let me reset it so that it starts back at what it originally is. And if I go masked BW, it's now created the mask, turned it into black and white. And if we look at the mask here, here's the inverted mask and here's the flower mask. And it completely, using AI, picked the flower out and then picked the background out. All in one click.
So what if you had on the original photo had used mask subject and it will select that subject? Can you scroll down on the presets then and click on the black and white preset and it will act on will that act on the entire photo or will it act on the mask?
That's a good question. Well, I guess it would be, it would depend if you were, let's see.
I'm
So
curious
if we
how the
reset,
presets work with each other. Is that something that you
yeah,
probably would use at the beginning and then do other
let's,
stuff?
let's see, if I selected and just selected that, now if I went down to the presets for black and white, the preset for black and white looks like it's going to just, it's going to do the whole thing. Yeah, most of the presets, I believe, will work on the whole photo, not just the masks part. The only thing that the mask would do is if you know, you could do black and white just by desaturating. But yeah, when you go to the preset, it really, most of the presets work on the whole image.
Yeah. So they really are, it's is the key word there. It's preset.
Yeah.
It's something you want to do in the beginning to preset the settings so that you can go and make others. So you wouldn't go back to presets.
Right. The masking will just work with, you know, whatever you set here. So, so if I go back up to, I don't know what's going to happen here, but if I go to masked in black and white, yeah, it's sort of added masks to what I originally had. The nice part is you can always reset and start over if you're not happy. And now if I hit that.
I'm sorry, I sort of missed that question. What was it you were trying to do?
Trying to see if the black and white would just affect the mask part of the image.
So let's say you wanted just the flower to be in color and you wanted the rest of it to be in black and white. What you could do is select the flower, then invert that mask, and then desaturate the stuff that was in that mask, and that will turn everything in black and white except for the flower. So then you would have the flower in color.
Yeah, Jim, my question was more general than that, though. My question was, how do the presets interact with each other if you use one and then another? And I think the answer was, that's not something you would want to do. You would want to start with a preset on an image, and then from there do changes in like the basic panel, but you wouldn't go back to the presets in the middle of processing a photo and click on them.
Yeah, the way Lightroom approaches this is that it only will really recognize one preset at a time. However, it depends on how people write their presets. So some people are very smart and they know to make sure that all of the sliders are at 0 before they start. Then they adjust some, and when you use theirs reset everything that they don't want you to have on. They reset them to 0. Some people only write their presets in such a way that they only adjust the presets that they have adjusted, but they leave everything else alone. So it kind of depends on who wrote the presets. If you use a program like On1, you can actually use one preset, and then on top of that, add another preset. There's a way to insert what you're adding in, but that doesn't work well in Lightroom. So it's one preset at a time, and then you will have to go back and adjust the sliders.
Yep. So, but I'm not a big fan. I don't do a lot. You can see my user presets. There aren't many here because I just have a couple that I use. But I'm going to be using the mask stuff a little bit more. I'm going to have to clean up my presets after I'm done here because I've done so many here. But that I'm not. But that's the nice part too, is Lightroom has made it easier to actually manage all these presets too, because you can go in and manage and you can turn stuff on and off. You can actually see I have a ton of presets that I don't even use right now. Ben Wilmore has a whole bunch of presets. Matt K has a bunch of presets that I use. So you can show and hide, even On One has a bunch that, and I'm probably going to start deleting some of these presets, but it doesn't hurt to keep some of it just in case you might want to use it. And then they have Lightroom added a bunch of classic. I believe these are the new ones. They added a bunch of new ones. Huh?
I've got a question, Jeff.
Sure.
I've got a preset that I use upon import. And one of the things that does is adds my copyright and a couple of other standard settings that I usually use.
Right.
Is there a way of specifying that preset as being a different preset when I use, when I do imports from a different camera?
Yeah, there is, believe there's a, you can use either the serial, I believe.
Yeah, it is it's a preference issue, and I don't have that program open, so I can't tell you exactly where to click. But yes, so you can specify what preset it uses for what camera, and you can even go further and tell it, I want this preset for these ISOs or this setting or whatever. So you can do very specific things if you choose.
Mm-hmm.
If you give me a second here, I'll tell you where that is, but I got to run to a different machine to take a look at it.
Yeah, I can't remember where it is myself. I know in the import module, you can pick whatever preset you'd use. That's why I have a couple, and they're pretty old, for the D800 and some others here. And I have starting presets like for Road America. And here's my starting settings, which basically, it doesn't look like it's doing a whole lot. Oh, it doesn't do anything in masks. Where is that?
Jeff,
my basic
on a PC,
settings.
It's the edit button. It has the preferences on a PC. I don't know how Mac works.
Under.
So if you go up to edit, I think it may have your preferences.
Oh, yeah, under Mac, yeah, preferences are here for Lightroom.
And then I think it might have an import setting in there.
Yes, under import, it does ask you what camera you have, and then you can go and set all that up at that point.
Okay.
And there's defaults in there and how to set that up. So yeah, it's in that import under presets, and then it's preferences, presets, and then you'll see, like I see my camera listed, and then you could go ahead and give it specific instructions every time it imports from that camera.
Right, under must be under the global camera settings. Oh, okay, that's the settings. So for RAW, oh, it's yeah, it must be this area here that's grayed out because I don't have anything set.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think at the very top, it says, for instance, it says global settings. Then you have to check that checkbox. Then it will let you specify your camera down below, and then you can put in all these other default settings that you want. And when you save that, then it will look for your camera and it will put those things in. I don't know if you'll see it there yet, Jeff, but if you go right just below where you are, there's a little checkbox. Get out of that setting and click that.
Oh yeah.
Now you'll see it's going to ask for your camera. Now on your drop down, you might even have some cameras listed. I don't know, but
yeah, I don't have any. Yeah, I don't have any listed. And
but you can go ahead and get your camera in there, and then you can set up everything for that.
Yeah, I've never used that. I bring all my stuff in as my camera settings, or you can pick Adobe defaults. Or you can use your user presets too. So, yeah, so that's where it is. I've never done that. It's probably a good thought because especially if you have some stuff that you're going to change.
If
No,
there's certain
I even
things you
learned
do every
stuff.
time, like for instance, I know Adobe usually puts their preliminary colors and whatever in there, but you like your camera's colors, you can tell it to use that preference versus that, you know, what's standard. And again, if you wanted to do some sharpening a little bit as it comes in, it will do that for you. So, I mean, there's a whole bunch of things you can do on import if you choose.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And probably if I show this, just so everybody can tell.
Well, what I was shooting at was that I also bring my wife's pictures from her camera in, and I would put the copyright for her on those pictures.
Sure. Yeah. And here's where I put like in my develop settings where I would pick what I would want to do. Usually I just have starting settings, which is for me, just of course I boost my saturation, or I boost my vibrance, and I boost clarity up. And then here's where I put in my copyright during import.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm not quite sure how it works when you pick your camera. It must do more of this stuff when you import it. But I got to admit, I've never tried that. I might have to look at doing that once. But no, interesting. Interesting idea. Yeah. Any other questions? That's really all I really had. There wasn't that much new in Lightroom, but the preset with the masking is pretty powerful. I was impressed with it, and I started fooling with photos, and I found I could do flower shots a lot quicker because I'm doing a lot of this type of stuff where I just want to darken the background and bring the flower out and crop it.
Jeff, that one of the most powerful parts of that, I think, is that new amount slider for the presets, which is getting into like opacity and what they do with opacity in Photoshop. But did I notice that there's now an amount slider on your masks? Is that new?
There's amounts sliders for a couple areas if you go into the profile area that we were in to do like black and whites, and that there is a slider that you can now use, which is new.
I think when you're doing a mask too, it does an amount.
Yeah, there is an amount in the masking as well. Let me close this. Yeah, they've added amount sliders. Let's see.
At the top, yeah.
Yeah, here it is. So you can adjust, that whole adjustment now can be adjusted either to 2 times as strong, 0 is, or 100 is where it starts at. And then you can, I don't know why they didn't do minus and plus, because that's really what it's doing. There's now 0 amount of adjustment up to the full amount to 2 times the amount. So that's there, and then it's also there for the presets over here. So yeah, they've added the amount slider all over the place.
And that's very much like the opacity slider in Photoshop, which is cool. They should have used the same, like they use 0 to 100% in Photoshop. They probably should have done the same here.
Yeah. But no, they've added a bunch of little features that have really, it's gotten me to the point that I don't use many The only plugin I'm using is Nick. And I still like Nick's black and white conversion more than I do their Lightroom's black and white. And even with the color profiles, I like the adjustments that I can do with Nick. And I still like Nick color effects for bringing in detail. So, you know, if I was going to process this image completely, I would probably do what I did originally, which was brighten that up a little bit. Could have done this with the preset, but I'll do it manually. Then I would have darkened the background. That's probably pretty decent. Everything else, I would bring that up, drop that a bit. But then I would go into Nick and into their color effects. And I was thinking of showing off Nick one of these days because the new Nick 5 that they just brought out, except that I'm still learning it myself.
Does that open the Nick standalone or?
No, it's opening Nick's plugin. Everything's running a little slow because I'm running Zoom, and I think I got Photoshop on as well. Now, you guys can't see that because it opened on my other screen, so I'll drag it over. But Nick created a whole new look to their layout interface. It's still somewhat the same. They've got all their different presets. Now, my favorite one, I like to use brilliance and warmth, and you've actually got a couple of different presets here that you can go through. Actually, that one probably, that's a little too much. Oof. Even for me, that's too much. That one's not bad. But I like the brilliance and warmth just to warm it up a little bit. I think I would warm it a little bit more than that. And a lot of times I just start with their normal preset. And what's neat is as you use a preset, it puts this little bar here to let you know that you've used that one. The other one that I like to use is Detail Enhancer. And all you do is you click the plus and that adds the next filter on, and then it shifts everything down for you. And it remembers whatever the last setting was that you used. For me, I did a little bit to bring in just a little more detail. I don't like to do much with the saturation anymore. So that's pretty much gotten it where I'd want. And then you just, of course, hit apply. Before I do that, just to show you, they've got a lot of different presets that you can use. Pretty much the same presets. They've added a few and they added more inside all these. If you click on it, you actually have more different ones that you can work with.
Nick, I mean, Jeff, I have a question. If you
Sure.
use that in Lightroom, what it does is it puts an extra layer. I think it's a smart layer, if I remember, and you can go back in. If you do this in Lightroom, is there any way to go back in and change, or do you just have to undo it?
No, if you wanted to be able to go back and change it, then you'd have to take the image into Photoshop first, then turn that image into a smart object, and then you could use Nick, and then you could make your changes and go back. So that is one good way to do it, is to do it in Photoshop and make it a smart image. or smart object, and then you're able to go back and re-edit it. So
do you ever lose any resolution or quality in the picture of always transferring it back and forth, to make it a smart object?
No, actually making a smart object makes it, you lose less in some ways, because you can actually re-edit it. Yeah, let me just apply this one and I can show you. Come on. I know we're pushing my computer to the edge here. So here's the original raw file. So if I take it into Photoshop, let's see, just have to figure out where Photoshop's going to pop up. Come on. Or maybe it didn't.
Well, we definitely got a good group of people, answering, and answering questions.
Okay, let me just drag my Photoshop over. So yeah, what you'd want to do is once it's in Photoshop, you want to make it a smart object. So you can convert it to a smart object first. Then if you go into, say, the Nick collection, and say I wanted to do the detail extractor, and we'll do the brilliance and warmth again. Now, if I apply that, so now that's applied here with the smart filters. You can see here's Color Effects Pro 5. The nice part too, if you do it as a smart object, is you can actually, you've got a mask that you can actually mask out that effect. You can turn it off or on, which will take a second to come back on.
Jeffrey, there's one little gotcha on this, though. I learned when everybody was doing those, I don't know if you've seen those twirls, the twirl photos. Where you the setup for that is to do filters on a smart object like that. I learned that every time you make a change to the photo, every time it's sitting there processing like it just did, it's reprocessing that filter. And so if it's a filter that changes the photo anyway, it can come out differently every time. If you do a slight resize on the photo, it reprocesses.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And a lot of people aren't aware of that.
Yeah. If I double click on the filter on that smart object, I haven't used the plugin here on this, but now it's brought me back to Nick and I can readjust that filter again. So I have complete control of that filter. And if I, want to make any changes, say I wanted to make it stronger and then hit apply. So with that, yeah, you can do quite a bit with layers. And then if I wanted to, I could add a different filter. Say, let's see, that was in think the new analog effects had some neat stuff in it, if I remember right. Yeah, because they have bokeh. The new zoom and rotate was sort of nice in Nick's new filters. You can adjust the zooming and the strength if you wanted to get just what you needed. And you can actually move the center point to whatever you need. Or even if you wanted to rotate it, you can actually rotate the zoom. Let's go there. Let's go crazy. But I'm finding, and there's some other nice little in this analog effects. I didn't think I'd use it because a lot of it is light leaks and dirt and scratches. And that's the last thing I ever wanted to add to my photo. But they do have bokeh and the zoom effect. That's sort of nice, and some motion blur. So they've got some nice little new features in here. So the nice part is, I imagine, being a smart object, yeah, if you change it, it's probably going to change something with this as it reapplies it.
Yeah, the case where I saw this come up was where we were doing the twirls that puts all kind of sprayed lines around it. And when I saved it to a JPEG, I got a picture that I thought I was getting, and then I saved it to a little bit smaller JPEG a few days later, and it was completely different twirls. And I compared the two photos, and discussing it with the guy who taught me how to do the twirling, we figured out that was coming because it reprocessed the filters. And it reprocessed.
Oh, because you changed the size of the file.
And it completely reprocessed the changes that I did in the filter and made it a little bit different. So I think people have to be aware of that. I
would probably have exported it out as a JPEG or whatever file type, and then maybe either flattened it or rasterized it and then changed the file size.
Yeah, that's what I do now whenever I have a filter.
Yeah.
I flatten the layers. But again, if you come back, a few months later and you want to make a small change to that photo and then resave it out, you run the risk of making that change and then saving it, flattening it, or whatever. It might have processed it a little bit different, and when you flatten it, you get a little bit different photo.
Yeah, the other way that I would maybe do it is, say I like this setup. If I go into my actions, I've got one that actually creates a layer. I call it merge layer, and it takes all my layers and it merges it and flattens it into a final layer. So would be a copy of it that would be just exactly what I had. That's not going to change no matter what, because it's now a flat layer. You could do it that way, and then if you changed it, you could change it any other way.
Yeah, that's also the famous, was it Control Shift Alt E on the
right.
That makes
I made it an action because I could never remember the Control Shift Alt E. And my hands could not hit all those keys at the same time. I'll show you. Here's the Raya Pro. Man, he's created a lot of panels. Raya Pro 6 is the newest version. He's got all these panels and he's got a hub for, this is for all luminosity masking, and he's got a lot of different stuff that he's created. This is just getting to be ridiculous. I keep, these all sit on my other screen, but Raya Pro has gotten to be probably almost as much as what the Kuiper stuff is.
Yeah, it's very similar, actually. He has several different panels, and usually I use one that has the actual luminosity mask. I think the Instamask on this one is the one that has the
the Instamask here, it's 1 through 5, I believe. And they've got a lot of different, he's got a lot of different ones here. There's precision masks yet that I haven't shown, and I've got I actually don't use this stuff pretty much anymore.
I don't either.
He's got but Raya Pro 6 is pretty nice one for masking if a person does it. I'm staying more with the stuff that's built in to Photoshop normally, but yeah, I've forgotten all the stuff that Raya Pro has.
So when you're done with this in Photoshop, the alternative is to save it to a PSD file, or you do a save, I think these days, and it its own name and puts it back in Photoshop. But it's not something still, they don't have the ability to go back and forth easily still.
No, I basically, I save it, as a PSD file, and then that way I can go back and re-edit it. And I can do the adjustments. You know, I can make more adjustments in Lightroom if I wanted to, but if I come back to Photoshop, those adjustments won't be seen.
Right. That's one of the gotchas that Adobe still hasn't dealt with very well. If you take a PSD file and you start making Lightroom edits on it, you lose the layer, and then you bring it back to Photoshop, you lose the layers, the Photoshop layers.
Yeah, there's 2 ways you can deal with that. You know, you can, when you export it out again, got to get into Photoshop. You go to the edit in and edit into Photoshop. Now, you can, if you edit a copy, that's going to flatten everything that you had and apply those adjustments, or you can edit the original so that you can go back and do the original, and then when you come back to Lightroom, it will reapply those adjustments.
But when you edit original, you lose the Lightroom adjustments that you've made since that PSD file was last saved.
Yeah, if they could figure out a way to do that, but it makes sense. It's hard. It's 2 different systems, so you just sort of figure. I either do it with do a copy with the original adjustments and the Lightroom stuff, and then bring it back into Photoshop, and it's sort of like not starting over, but starting from that point on. And I always have my backups to go back to. But
yeah, I think that most people, and I picked this up, is you start in Lightroom and you do some Lightroom edits, and then bring it into Photoshop and do the stuff there.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of ways you can go about doing this stuff. So, but it's certainly getting powerful enough that I'm happy to stay with Lightroom and Photoshop and not using.
One thing I do in Lightroom after I've saved a PSD file is I have all my photos cataloged and keywords and that sort of thing. And so I add keywords and that sort of thing and put them in catalogs and rate them, even though they're PSD files, which isn't meaningful for Photoshop anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. We do have a comment from Barb that says smart objects do increase the size of your files. Yep, it's keeping the full size of your file, and it can get pretty big with it. The good part is hard drive space has gotten cheap, so I'm not as worried about it as I used to be.
But you also
So-
have to be careful because of that, I think, of not creating, you're so used to just copying layers over and over and doing something different on layers. If you start doing that with smart objects, you can come out with files that are 2 or 3 gigs, and then you start getting into the PSB files that are the big files.
Yeah, and then Lightroom doesn't see some of those files when they get too big. Yep, there's always some problem with it, but yeah, and some of my files get to be 700-800 megabytes because they're big files to begin with. So
yeah, I think the idea is just to know the tricks and to know the little ins and outs.
Yep.
And work with them.
Well, it's kind of hard too in that when you have these high megapixel cameras. I mean, our one friend that I have, he has a 150 megapixel camera. You start at 150 megapixel, you start editing, like what you said, you can have a couple gig.
yeah,
Yeah, and you put them together in a pano of 3 or 4 files, and then you're down the road, and even your 12 terabyte drive starts to fill up.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you're right. I never thought about that. Yeah, you could have 10 gig just on one panoramic view.
yeah. No, sometimes you can. You got to watch that a little bit, or you're flattening files out and not having as much of a backup. But yeah. So no. Any other quick questions? Otherwise, I think that's about it. We're afternoon already, so went pretty quick for another digital forum. So I want to thank everybody for coming, and I'm not sure what we'll be talking about next month. I'll try to come up. I'm trying to get a speaker, but it's really been hard to get them. They're traveling so much during summertime that they're hard to get for on a Saturday, but we'll see. But we're working on speakers. If anybody has speaker ideas, please send them to me and let me know. And
Good
other than
presentation
that,
today, Jeffrey.
no
Good
problem.
presentation.
Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. I'm trying
Yeah.
to stop my share and
A lot of great information.
yeah, no,
Thank
great.
you.
I'm glad everybody enjoys it. It's fun to do. So with that, we'll see everybody next month. Have a good 4th of July. Golly, that's coming up quick.
I'll probably see you in August instead because of the EAA air adventure in Oshkosh. So that'll be
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get there one day, but I'm not sure. So we'll see. We're trying to get to all those different things, but well, thanks everybody for coming. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
we'll see you next month.